Korey, how are you, my friend?
Hey, doing great. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm really good. I've been having a lot of fun doing this podcast. I don't know if you've seen some of the episodes, but I've been able to start to venture outside of specifically just fans, but also to cast and crew of the show, and then people of like your nature who you are a professional in the sense of voice acting or things like that. I've been able to talk to some Barney fans who are artists and things, so it's really exciting to be able to talk to different people in the creative world that also have this common connection with Barney like I do. So it's really a lot of fun. I am grateful that you have asked and chosen to do this for me. So
Yeah.
thank you for coming on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I was excited about it. I've been watching some of the podcasts, so I've seen a few
Nice.
of them, and I think it's really cool that you're able to get some of the cast and crew people on there. That's always interesting. I think those are my
For sure.
favorite.
Yeah. It's fun to talk to the fans, but I think it is my favorite too, coming with the cast and crew, because we've seen other podcasts by people who were involved in the show, who interview people involved in the show, or they've been on other podcasts. But I think it's a little bit different when it's the fans. Like
Mhm.
myself, I'm an actual fan of the show. I was inspired by the show, so I can ask questions that I know we fans would like to know, and kind of like those
Right.
details that sometimes the other people might not even know anything about, or just weren't around for those kind of things. And so I think it's a little bit of a more fun conversation when we can talk about what do the fans actually want to know, and I can ask those things. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I hope to continue talking to people as we go along, for sure.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. um to get started, I always ask the same question for everybody when we come in here, and it's just, what was your introduction to Barney? Do you remember whatever your earliest memory was of Barney and watching that show?
Yeah, I was a kid that grew up in the early to mid late '90s, so I was a '90s kid. Um, so I remember as a really young kid. I mean, I was probably only like a year and a half, 2 years old at the most, watching the old Barney in the Backyard Gang videos.
Mhm.
So I started out with the blue Barney, I guess is what they call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started out with that, and then of course by the time I was two, I mean Barney and Friends was already on, so I was watching that. Um, and so I saw a lot of those, and I always loved Barney. I always thought it was great. The fact that he's so accepting of everyone, and just unconditional love. And I think that's very important at a young age to kind of get to know about that, and
Yeah,
just that's a thing that can that is real.
for sure.
Um, and I saw so I saw a lot of Barney. I watched a lot of Barney. I remember I had several of the home video releases, but I also had the Live in New York.
Uh-huh.
That was
Yeah.
probably my favorite as a kid.
Yeah.
And I got to go see Barney live a handful of times in Dallas, because I live about an hour or so from Dallas.
Wow.
So I was able to go see Barney at the Majestic Theater. Now, it's not the one that they recorded, but
Yeah.
one of the shows. I saw two or three of them live, I believe. I know I saw the Barney's birthday surprise.
Hmm.
And I want to say there was another one, but I don't remember exactly which one it was.
Gotcha. Man,
But it's cool seeing it live is awesome.
that's super cool. I've said on this podcast before, I never had a chance to see Barney live. I saw like the birthday bash, which was their very last show they did in like 2011.
Mhm.
I forget because the show had already fallen from what made it popular anyway.
Yeah.
But when, in the prime of what Barney was, the Live in New York City's, the Big Surprise, Musical Castle, all of those ones, I didn't get a chance to see those. So I'm always jealous of people like yourself who've been able to step into those auditoriums and see those shows. Real quick, let's talk about, you mentioned Barney at Majestic, and not many fans know about it. Some of us do, but that there were other Barney shows that happened at the Majestic. Some
Yeah.
before the Barney in concert, and then I think there was one afterwards when they were celebrating or kicking off the premiere for season 1. What was that experience like, seeing that show? Can you explain? Do you remember a little bit of that?
Oh man, I was probably like 3.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but I do remember it though. I mean, I don't remember lots of details about it because obviously I was 3, but I remember the experience. I remember being there. My parents took me. I don't have it with me. I wish I had it. I didn't think about it, but my dad actually has a picture on his wall in his house of me sitting in his lap, and I'm in a Barney clothes and stuff, Barney t-shirt and stuff, and we're sitting there in the audience watching Barney live, which was pretty cool because it was neat to go to his house a couple years ago, and he'd started hanging up old pictures, and that was one of them, and I was like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, it was really cool. I remember there being like a really big line. I remember that, and there was literally, you know, it's different when you go somewhere and 90% of the audience is children.
Yeah,
it's so different. They're more involved in it. They're more excited about it. So it was really neat.
It's strange too because I don't think we've seen that since Barney. It wasn't seen before where Barney brought out these droves of people where most, like you said, 90% of it is nothing but children and their parents bringing them.
Yeah.
And you don't really see it much now. You'll there's some shows for kids that are out, but it's a healthy mix of older kids and adults and teenagers and younger kids. It's not how it was with Barney, where it was specifically parents and maybe some siblings and all these tiny children, right? It was such a strange thing for them to be able to pull off going against the grain of what was on television at that time and sticking to that, where they just targeted nothing but that preschool realm. And it really did pay off for them in a strange way that a lot of people underestimated. So yeah, that would have been something wild to see how many people there's been so many stories of like how they'll go into malls when they expect to have maybe a couple thousand people and then 15,000 people. It happened here. I live in Omaha, and I work with this guy who's on a radio station, and they brought Barney here in the early 90s when you can still pay for the costume to come out. And they didn't get a chance to bring him out and interact with any of the kids because there was like literally 15,000 people that they did not expect. And so they overwhelmed security. So every time Barney would try to come out, they would like just rush him. And so they canceled the entire event. So people were here and they couldn't, because it just wasn't safe to bring them out into that crowd because there just wasn't enough security to manage everybody. It's so crazy to think that a preschool franchise, especially in those early days, was pulling that much popularity and having that much hold on the communities that he existed in.
It's pretty cool to think though that what television, what kids television shows that generally are primarily early morning television.
Yeah.
How many of those get a prime time NBC show in the middle of the afternoon or evening, whenever most of the heavy hitting shows are on? You have an NBC show of Barney of Imagination Island. It's like, that's unheard of. You don't have that. I don't even know if that's happened again since then.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It was a huge deal. It was, I would say, like the Barney, the big Barney events. It was almost like Woodstock with strollers.
Yeah.
So it was cool. I mean, it's cool to see if you can find. I think I've seen. I don't know if it was Bob West or somebody that it was in one of the Barney groups, but they posted pictures of like literally it was like outdoor events and there was just strollers everywhere.
Yeah,
which is so cool.
There's a couple pictures of that, and even there's one of David Joyner. It's not strollers that you see, but you see him on stage and he's like mid jump, and it's just hundreds of thousands of people just scattered everywhere. That had to be a wild time to be alive, and I wish I could have been able to see some of those kind of, because I was alive at those times, but I didn't get a chance to go to those kind of things. So it would have been kind of crazy to see that, and just imagine the people who work on that show experiencing that and just seeing the magnitude of this show had reached at that point. Yeah, it's insane, man.
Yeah, I live about 35 minutes from Allen, Texas, which is where it started. It was started in Allen, Texas, and then of course it moved to Dallas area.
Mm-hmm.
But I've actually seen the studio where they did that, which was pretty neat. And there's a lot of I think because of where I'm at, it might have been, obviously Barney was a worldwide phenomenon, and specifically in the U.S. as well.
Yeah.
But I think because I live so close to it, I mean, people around here really embraced it. There wasn't a lot of the hate that you would, that had been attributed to Barney later. Mm-hmm. I never saw that. Of course I was a kid, but
yeah, you kind of touched on something that I was going to ask. Being someone who grew up in Texas, what was the experience like with people knowing that Barney was there? Was this kind of this? Was there kind of an understanding or a knowledge that most people had that it was happening there in Texas and being filmed?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the other cool thing is that I actually know Julie Johnson.
Really?
So I have family friends, like basically my uncle and my aunt are very, very close to her.
Wow.
She grew up around them and was real. Like, I don't think that she's actually related to them. I think that they were just, I think her parents and them were friends.
Yeah.
But she grew up around them. So because of that, and she actually lives 10 minutes from where I live. Now, I know she does a lot of stuff in California too, I believe, but she grew up and lived nearby. So I've met her on numerous occasions. Sadly, a lot of times it ends up being at like family funerals, which is kind of sad because it's, but I've met her many times. And of course I've actually, whenever I started doing the Barney impressions and stuff and Barney voices, and she saw it and she was just like, oh my gosh, Bob needs to see this.
Yeah.
And I don't know for a fact, but I think that may have been why Bob West knew kind of what I was doing and messaged me, but it was pretty cool.
Nice. What's Julie Johnson like?
Like, she's an extremely nice person. Extremely nice person.
It seems like so, but we don't get to see her much or hear from her much. Which I wish I would change. Tell her that she should come on the podcast.
I'm not that great of friends with her, but I've know her. You know, it's kind of an acquaintance. But she definitely is a very nice person. Very good. Always been really nice to me when I've met her. And I've never heard anybody say anything bad about her. She's always been, really nice. But I think she's a performer. She does primarily Broadway stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so that's mainly her focus, I think.
For sure.
And but she does that, and that's I think more so what she's involved in than anything that has to do with Barney, because that's been 20 years since she's done it. So
for sure. Man, that's awesome. You said that Bob West reached out to you before. You've had a chance to talk to Bob West, and how's that gone? Has he given you any advice or things like that?
Oh yeah.
What you're doing now as a voice actor?
Absolutely. Yeah. That he reached out to me. I had sent him one of my video, like the video of me doing Barney. And I was like, this is a long shot. He's never going to see it.
Yeah.
But I was like, why not? And then he reached out to me a couple days later, and he was like, I can't remember. I have it's like long paragraphs. Like, he was sending me like a lot of messages, and he was just like, started out with like, darn good Barney, among the best I've heard to sound like my voice. He said, he actually gave me some tips, and he was like, here's based off listening to your Barney voice, here's what I think you could do to make it 100%, because it's about 90 something right now.
Nice.
And I was like, okay. And I actually, I took that and I applied it, and I think it has made it better. Yeah. So that's definitely, that was cool to have like the real Barney, give you tips on that. But then he sent me paragraphs of, here's how to get into voice acting. Here's what you need to do. Here's the steps you should take. You should, he basically was like, because I live near Dallas, and he did a lot of work in Dallas. He was like, here's some of the places that you could go to pitch your, commercial work and things like that, to be able to get onto commercials. And which was really nice of him. Like, he didn't have to do that, but it was really neat. He's been very, very nice and very helpful. And I've asked him some questions, and he'll, he's a busy guy. He takes a day or so to reply, but he's always replying, and he's always like, yeah, absolutely. And he seems really enthusiastic about it. And he's liked some of my videos on Instagram, which is cool. Yeah. And that was pretty cool.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, Bob seems like a really sweet guy. I haven't talked to him directly, specifically, like through messages like you have, but he knows of me because of the show that I do and things like that. But I've had that same experience with other people within the Barney world with my show, where they give advice. Steve White, Bob Singleton's done some music for this new season.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's cool.
He did our ending song. I like to call it our "I Love You" song. He reworked that. He actually even he said that it was some of like a great song. He usually when he hears music from songs from people, they're not usually that great. He changes things or has to enhance it. But he said like our song was nearly perfect. But he also penned some extra lyrics just to help bring home the message that we were already trying to give. So I get to have this song now that is like now it's the credits are written by Karan Stark and Bob Singleton, which is insane.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But he also did a really popular traditional song that Barney made really popular that we made our own version of, and he hadn't done the instrumental for that one in over 25 years. And I went back to him and he did it for this new season. So people will know what it is when it comes out. But I've been able to work with people like him and Steve White and ask Fred Holmes, one of the directors, questions about things, and they look at my scripts or they give advice. And I think that speaks to what Barney was. We always talk about Barney as the character, but Barney was he was popular and he was successful because of the people that were put in place to bring him to life and to write for him the music, the voices, whatever that was. And you can see that through the Bob West or the Julie Johnson or Steve Whites when you're talking to them and how willing they are to one support you and the work that you're doing and congratulate you on that, but also provide you with advice if they have any or just thoughts to help you get to where you want to get to. And I think that's one of the best things about being in this franchise community is having those people who care so deeply about the character, but also about the people who were inspired by that character, you know?
Yeah, it's always great to it's always, well, I'll start it like this. It's always kind of sad when you see somebody that you looked up to and then you find out more about them and you're like, oh, they weren't really as good of a person as I thought they were. That was just an act for the show. But then you meet the people that were involved with Barney and it's like these people were almost just like that. I mean, that was who they were. I mean, Bob is super nice, super friendly. I feel like he almost is Barney, or he is Barney in a way. Like that's just who he is. Like he's just super nice and he's just really welcoming and really, friendly, and which is cool, because that's what you want. So I think he was perfect. I grew up with his version of Barney. I never actually watched any of the other Barney perform, like the people who were doing the voices, because at that point I was old enough where I wasn't watching it for a while. Yeah. So I watched maybe the first 4 or 5 seasons of Barney and Friends. And then at that point I was probably like 11 or 10. So it's like, it wasn't really for my age group anymore, but that's what I see as Barney. So.
Perfect. Do you have, when it comes to those early years of Barney, when you used to watch them, do you have a favorite video or episode that you can remember that's like maybe your favorite out of all of them?
Yeah, I liked as far as the Barney in the Backyard Gang, I think my favorite one was the camping one.
Oh, sure.
I remember that one vividly as a kid because I watched it a lot. And I think originally we were renting the Barney videos from a little mom and pop shop that was like a video rental store.
Oh yeah.
And then after a while, my parents were like, "We're just renting the same couple videos over and over and over again. We might as well just buy them." Yeah. So they bought them for me. But yeah, that one, and then like I said earlier, the live in New York, at New York City Music Hall, or Radio City Music Hall. That's a great one. Of course. And of course, Imagination Island. Imagination Island's probably my favorite Barney of all time. Yeah. It was a big deal to me as a kid. For sure. Probably the last Barney thing that I watched is either the movie that they made, The Great Adventure, or maybe the one where they go to space, where they like they're in space.
You mentioned you watching the Backyard Gang kind of stuff. Was that the first version of Barney that you had seen, or had you seen Barney and Friends first and then was exposed to the Backyard Gang kind of thing?
I'm not positive, to be honest with you. If I was guessing, I would probably say, because I stayed at a daycare center for a couple of years when I was really little, for like 5 or 6 hours a day, and that place introduced me to 2 or 3 different shows. It introduced me to Barney, I believe, and it also for sure introduced me to Blue's Clues.
Oh yeah,
which was a big part of my childhood. Like, I loved Blue's Clues. I also saw Blue's Clues live.
wow.
I saw that when I was a kid. And my parents took me to that, which was cool because they had Steve, which wasn't really Steve Burns, but it was like somebody playing him. But they had Steve like up in the air on a harness, basically with the cape, and he was flying across the stage, and so which was really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
But awesome. Yeah, I would say probably it was, if I was guessing, it was probably Barney and Friends, just because that was more easily available to the daycare center.
Sure.
Because I think we were watching mostly like stuff that people had recorded off their TV.
Oh, okay.
And they were just throwing in videotapes. But I definitely remember having the Barney in the Backyard Gang. That might have been the first time I saw it. I don't know. But I'm not really sure. Yeah, I was 2, so I probably don't remember all of that. But
yeah, exactly.
I definitely have vivid memories of both as a child.
Awesome. So you said as you had gotten older, you grew out of the franchise for a while. Was it just something that, sometimes as some Barney fans, they consciously make the decision and the effort to be like, all right, I think I'm too old, so I'm not like a child anymore. I'll stop watching this stuff for a while. Some it just happens naturally, and then you come back to it.
I don't think it was that. I think it was more so of there was other shows that I was more interested in that were more geared towards my age group. Yeah. I don't think I ever made a conscious decision like I'm too old for this. I don't think it was that. I think it was more so like, hey, there's other shows that I'm really enjoying, like Rocket Power and Doug and Ren and Stimpy and the Rugrats, and so there was all these other shows that were a huge thing in the 90s,
Definitely.
So the 90s, maybe I'm partial just because, and I'm sure I am because that's when I grew up, but I feel like the 90s had some of the best cartoons for people to watch as a kid. I mean, there were so many of them. I think it had mainly to do with Nickelodeon, but that being said, there's a lot of wonderful cartoons from the 70s and the 80s, and I'm a huge Scooby-Doo fan and all of those things.
Yeah. So I agree with you, though. There's some classics, like you just mentioned, Scooby-Doo, the Flintstones, those kind of things. But whatever happened during that 90s and early 2000s on both the Nickelodeon realm and Cartoon Network was something that I agree. The shows that aired there at that time are some of the best content for cartoons that you could have. Like, it hasn't happened like that with anything that's followed that era. And there was just a handful of those shows, like we just mentioned, the Scooby-Doos and Looney Tunes and things that came before that was kind of as equally great. But the 90s had so many new shows that were introduced that were just, it's a completely different time for sure.
Yeah. And I think for some reason that generation, so like the people from the 80s and 90s are probably more nostalgic about the things in their childhood than the previous generations, maybe. Yeah. Or at least they express it with money. Like they're like, we like this stuff. We will continue to buy these things if you put them out. And I think because of that, we see all these reboots. We see all these things that are, connected to, the stuff that we grew up with more so than, say, stuff from the 60s and 70s and stuff, which the 60s, I will say the 60s television shows, not kid shows, but just television shows are some of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
I love Gilligan's Island. Yeah. I love the Adam West Batman. I mean, I actually have an Adam West, well, you can't even see it, but I have an Adam West Batman cowl up here.
Oh, that's sick.
It's like an exact replica. And
nice.
If you can't tell from my room, I'm a big comic book fan. So yeah, I love that kind of stuff. So that was always a big part of my childhood and a big part of my life. Still is.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You mentioned that you can do a Barney impression. Can we hear like your Barney impression?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Why, hello there. Oh, I am so excited to be here.
That's awesome, man.
I love you.
Yeah. Man, that's really good. How long did it take you? You mentioned that Bob gave you some extra pointers, but he said you were at about a 90 by the time he heard what you can do. How long did it take you to do the voice? Because for me, growing up, the moment I could walk and talk, I used to imitate the show. Like I would stand in front of the TV. So I did it. I never left the franchise. I watched Barney all the way until it ended. So I was in high school, and I used to imitate every iteration of the voice and whoever was in the body and things like that. I can't do it that well anymore because my voice has gotten a lot deeper, so I can't really hit the pitches like I used to, like you guys can. But how long did it take you to kind of get to a comfortable place where that Barney voice kind of felt right for you?
Well, I used to. I mean, obviously, I was trying to do voices from the time I was a little kid, and I'm sure when I was a kid they weren't very good.
Yeah,
but I think I had done tried to do a Barney impression before, and it was pretty good. Probably when I was like a teenager.
yeah,
And but over the last like 3 years since I've had a daughter, and I've raised her watching Barney. Like I started her as like less than 6 months old, having her watch Barney, and she just immediately was attached to Barney and loved it. You know, I actually had all my old, like my parents were really good about keeping every toy that we ever had, which is insane, you know. But they kept them, like they would just, when we outgrew toys, instead of like, hey, let's have a garage sale and get rid of all this stuff, they would just put it in plastic boxes like totes and just put it in the attic because we had so much attic space. So I have like almost every action figure, every toy, every doll, everything that I had as a kid, I can find it.
That's amazing.
And so I've handed down all of my Barney, my Baby Bop, my BJ, everything that I had as a child. Not even just Barney, but everything. Anything that's a stuffed animal, my daughter, it's hers now. I mean, she just plays with them. So she carried around Barney for, you know, from the time she was like 6 months old until she still does. I mean, she still sleeps with a Barney in her bed, and she's 3.
That's awesome.
But she carries it to the doctor and stuff with her, and different things. And the all the nurses remember her specifically because, this is the girl that carries around the Barney doll. Like she went last time to the doctor, and that she forgot Barney at home, and she was the nurse was like, "Where's your Barney?" And she's like, "I forgot it." So she loves Barney. She's grown up now watching Barney, so it still connects with kids. I mean, it's just timeless, I think.
It really is timeless. It's even if you're watching those early seasons, season 1 and 2 of Barney, just the music, the way that it was filmed and things, aside from the look of like the clothes and the style that was in at that time, the show is timeless. Like the same things they were teaching on that very first episode in 1992 is just as relevant today. And it doesn't miss a beat. It doesn't feel out of place or anything like that. And you can't say that a lot for a lot of shows. Where it does, like some shows stand the test of time just because of like we say, like the nostalgia kind of thing. But Barney, you could turn it on today on a syndicated channel and it not feel like it's out of place of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think they kind of, and maybe they didn't do it consciously. Maybe it was just because of that wasn't, obviously they were real focused on what they were doing and the appeal of the show, but they also weren't really of their time. So like it wasn't like they were trying to be the modern and be hip and be like the most, you know, so it doesn't stand out as much as like, so if you watched other shows from the 90s, I mean, it's very dated, some of them. But Barney's really not. I mean, and I think it's more so just because of that. They didn't really try to go after what we need to be hip and cool and popular to what is modern. Yeah. They just kind of did their thing, and they kind of just, that was it. I mean, they didn't try to do that.
Yes, and Singleton, when I talked to him, he mentioned he did make a conscious effort, and it wasn't to be modern or hip or those kind of things. But he said when he was making the music in those early days of Barney, even with the Backyard Gang, those last 3 home videos and things, he said he purposely chose instruments and things that weren't like the it thing in the like for the 90s. Because he didn't want it later to, when you listen to the music, it sound dated because it was like, this is what was popular in the 90s. He said he chose different instruments and different things to put together into those arrangements to where it wasn't just specifically like, well, right now, these kind of pieces are the cool thing, so let's just use those. So, and it was a very good choice to make too, because, you know, it just doesn't feel, it doesn't feel like it's out of place in any moment of time. I think 20 more years from now, you can watch any of the old Barneys and it still feel just as relevant. And I think it's cool that you show your daughter. My daughter is 2 years old, and she's also grown up with Barney from the moment that she could start paying attention. She watches between my show and Barney is all she watches.
I actually showed my daughter your show.
Oh, really?
And she liked it. She really enjoyed it. So it definitely, it appeals with kids. She was really interested in it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for doing that. My inspiration was Barney. I'm inspired by others, Mr. Rogers and those guys, but Barney was where my love for music and acting and all those things came from. And so emulating what that show did and bringing it to this new generation in this classic kind of form and style of TV is what the whole goal is, to alongside with the education. So I'm always excited to hear when there's other kids who actually enjoy watching this show, because then the things I'm doing is in the right path. And
yeah, I think I'd much rather her watch that than like Coco Melon that annoys the crap out of me.
yeah.
although I will say, I think Coco Melon actually takes a lot of its inspiration from Barney, in that it's all the same kind of songs in a way.
Yeah,
they take a lot of those songs and they rework them. But I will say the one thing that annoys me, I think, the most about Coco Melon is that they'll use the same song and they'll just change the lyrics like 40 different times to be different things. And I'm just like, come on.
Yeah.
Do something original.
Yeah, we won't talk about Coco Melon too long, but I think the problem with them is they know that music and repetition is key to learning for young kids.
Yeah.
But the problem I have with it is, a lot of people think that it's teaching their kids because they're able to sing the songs, but they're not realizing. No, because they're able to sing the songs because it's been repeated so many times, they've memorized it. But they can't. There's something about singing songs and helping teach what you're teaching, but then having time in between to have dialogue to explain what we're singing about or what we're learning about. And it's just like a kid listening to a radio station today. If you're just listening to the regular radio, they're going to start singing those songs and have no idea what they're singing about, just that they have heard it so many times.
Which can be kind of dangerous with the music that we hear these days.
Exactly. So yeah. Moving on here was, for me, like I said, my show, Barney, was a huge inspiration for that. You're a voice actor, and impressionist. Is some of your inspiration pulled from Barney and the Bob Weston, Julie Johnson, and Patty Worth, the people that voice these characters on that show? Do you get any of your inspiration or wanting to be a voice artist from that show?
Maybe a little bit. I definitely admire Bob West for sure, and Julie. But I would say really what turned me into being a voice actor was probably Mel Blanc.
Okay, yeah.
Mel Blanc, and then of course like Billy West, and some of the really big name voice actors. Mel Blanc probably more so than anybody, because I was a huge Looney Tunes fan.
Sure.
And so when I see this, these Looney Tunes shows that are hilarious, and I see all these characters in it, and they all sound different. They don't really sound the same. And then I found out that, at some point in my head, I was like, somebody's doing this as a job. But yeah, Mel Blanc was definitely the inspiration. I saw him doing all these heard all these character voices, and I'm like, somebody's doing this as a job.
For real.
And that would be like the most fun job ever. Mm-hmm. And when I found out it was one guy doing 99% of the voices on the Looney Tunes, I was like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. So then I was like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And so, yeah, I started trying to learn how to do those voices and stuff. And
yeah, what's up, Doc? So I learned how to talk as Bugs Bunny, Doc, and that's one of my favorite voices to do.
So I learned how to do that and Daffy Duck.
Hey, what are you doing over there, Bugsy boy?
I learned how to do that stuff, and I was like, okay, that's what I want to, I want to do, not necessarily Looney Tunes, although I'd love to do Looney Tunes, but I just want to be able to do all these voices. This is cool. And so I learned how to do that stuff. And every time I found a new character voice that I was like, that's an interesting voice, I would try to learn how to do it. and most of them I found I could do. There's some within a certain range where it's just like I can't really sound exactly like it, and so I'm not gonna continue to try to learn it because it's out of my range of vocal ability, I guess. But maybe I could do it if I actually tried like really, really hard and spent a lot of time. But then I'm like, I could learn 6 other voices that are better.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Like one of those is Morgan Freeman. You see people doing Morgan Freeman. Like I can't do Morgan Freeman. I don't know why. I just can't. It's just not. It's not in my. I think it's because it's so deep that it's just not my range. But yeah. So I took a lot of inspiration from Mel Blanc, and I took a lot of inspiration from Billy West because he did all of the, Ren and Stimpy and Doug and all the Futurama voices, which I'm a huge fan of Futurama. And so those two were really big inspirations. Bob West, of course, was too. I think when I was a kid, though, like I was too young at that point to understand that Barney wasn't Barney. I just thought it was a real thing.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't at that point I wasn't going, oh, I want to do that, because I didn't understand it, didn't connect. But later on, as I, as an adult, and I got into the voice acting stuff, and I was like, okay, then I was like, okay, the guy that does Barney is just, that's a great voice. And so then I looked into that and learned how to do that. And that's been, out of all the voices that I can do, I'm surprised a little bit that that's the one that I've actually gotten hired to do the most.
Really?
Just doing, different tribute shows and stuff like that, that'll have me do the voice, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Dude, your other impression, your Barney impression is phenomenal. There's a couple people in the Barney franchise, in the community, who can do a Barney voice, who are really, really good. You're one of those. I think I can count on my hands how many people there are. There's others who are good, who have been practicing, but you guys like really sound like the Bob West, or some of them can do it.
Thank you.
Like it's nearly perfect. But your other voices too, the Bugs Bunny, the Daffy Duck, like I'm watching you clearly here, and as other people will be too, but it's like I can see that you're clearly not the person who does the voice for, but it sounds so identical that you almost start to, I don't know, it's a weird thing where you almost start to see the character versus who's doing it, because you're so
well, thank you. That says a lot. That means a lot.
Dude, you keep doing what you're doing there, because you're great at it, and I hope it pays off for you many times over as you go along. So yeah, great impressions, man. Strange question just came to me. If you were approached to do the voice of Barney, like in an actual television show, would you accept that type of?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a question. Yeah. I was really hoping, though, with the new Barney's World, that they would have Bob do it.
Yeah.
Because Bob expressed that he was, open to doing it, and I think that there would be nobody better than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if they came to me and they were like, "Hey, we'd like you to do it," absolutely, I would do it. I mean, that would be an honor to be able to be a part of that whole thing.
How would you make it different? Would you approach it in a sense of just doing the impersonation of Bob's Barney, or would you put a little twist on it? Because I don't know how familiar you are with the other voice actors for Barney, but after Bob left, there was
Dean Wentz, right? Was one of them.
Yeah, before Dean though, there was 2 other guys.
Yeah, one of them was the guy that plays Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, he's it was him, and there was one other. I'm trying to think of his name. It's crazy that I don't remember his name right now. But his Barney was very, very close to Bob West. It was just it just was a little bit lower of a voice. But it was almost like he was doing an impersonation of Bob West, just his voice was a little bit deeper. And then Dean Wint came in, and he started off kind of doing an impersonation of Bob's Barney, and then it evolved into what his Barney is now, which, older fans, they have a kind of a gripe with it. I appreciate it because there's only so much you can do when you take over a character to either make it your own or just follow in the shadow of what the other person did. So I appreciate Dean for being able to take the helm and make it his own thing. But if obviously it's hypothetically, if you were to be brought on as the voice of Barney, have you ever played around with different iterations of a Barney voice that makes it a little bit more original for you?
I haven't really because that's never, come up, but I'm not really sure how I would approach it. I mean, I feel like, if I'm honest, I feel like that I'd probably would just try to be as loyal to the Bob West voice as I could possibly be, just because that's what I grew up with. And that's how I kind of, when I think of Barney, I think of Bob West's voice. I don't think of anything else.
Yeah.
Although, like you were saying, you can go two ways about it. You can either go, I'm going to try to be as close to the original as possible, so that it's almost unknown that it's not the original, which I think says a lot, because it's like, if you can do that, I mean, that says something, that you're that close to the original. However, there is something to be loved about the idea of that they took a character that was well established and made it their own.
For sure.
So I can see both sides of that. And me being somebody who likes to do impressions, I probably would lean towards the trying to do as close as I could to Bob West. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, wait, maybe if that happens, I'll have an answer for you. If that ever happens, I'll come back on the show and I'll have a perfect answer for that question.
I call Dave's on the first
okay, I gotcha.
Before we bring out the item that you brought on today and then wrap this thing up, we mentioned it a little bit already. There's this new thing that's supposed to be coming out next year of Barney's World, this animated reimagining for the franchise. You have a young daughter who is a Barney fan. When you heard the news about it, or when you've seen what it looks like, and kind of from just the vague information we've gotten, do you have any opinions on this new iteration?
I do. Me personally, and my opinion of it is, obviously, being a fan of the original, I would have loved to have. I'm totally okay with it being an animated thing. I think that's cool. I think that brings it to a whole new medium of an entertainment. And I also think it's something they can maybe streamline a little and have it be more. There's a lot of advantage. I'm a big fan of animation. I'm a big fan of the 3D animated stuff. So that's fine with me. I wish the design would, because I'm a fan of the old one, I wish it would have looked more like the original, of course. But at the same time, when a new company acquires a character, they're generally, what they do is they try to go, let's take this and make it our own.
Yeah.
And let's change some stuff. And that way it's distinguished from the other. So they can be like, this is ours. And then the other one is that. And that's fine. That's normal. That's the business practices usually that happen. But as far as, I think what matters to me the most is it still recognizable as Barney? And is it still the same character? Does it still have the same values, the same, the same, does it have what made Barney Barney? I think that's the important thing. And so I showed, and I showed pictures of it to my daughter so that I said, hey, look at this. And she immediately recognized it as Barney. So that kind of cleared up my, concern of how it looks. Is like, if it's a 3-year-old that has only seen the other Barney, immediately recognizes it as Barney, then it's fine.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. I did the same thing to my daughter, and she instantly recognized it as Barney too. I think, everyone, when they see it, recognizes it as Barney. I think the problem is we as adults, especially the ones who are such diehard Barney fans who are used to the old things and we don't like change, especially if we're the Barney fans who are very nostalgic of just the 90s. Adults have this thing about them where we can look at something and then before we voice an opinion, we overanalyze it and change our ideas or our thoughts about it, right? I think as soon as all of us saw that first picture, we saw Barney, because what other dinosaur do you know that's purple and green, right? But as adults, we can sit on it for a second and then go, it looks nothing like Barney. But if you ever seen a purple dinosaur with a green stomach, even if it's not Barney, you automatically go, that looks like Barney, right?
Yeah.
It's just that's what made those colors popular on a dinosaur. So that's exactly what happened with my daughter though too. Is I show her this picture and it's instantly that's just Barney. It's no second guessing about it or anything. But I 100% agree with you, and I've said it before that I would be okay with the new look, and it's kind of growing on me the more that I see it, and the more I see the walk around costume. If who Barney is to the core is the same, there's been talk that maybe he's going to be a child or things like that. But I think if it's still about the education, still about the love for people and acceptance of people and teaching those lessons, I could accept this vastly different looking version of this character, because what made him special wasn't what he looked like, but what was he providing to us as young children, you know?
Yeah, and I think Barney also kind of promoted the idea of it doesn't matter what you look like.
Exactly.
So it kind of fits, in a way. And I think, I've seen some people argue that, they should have had people from the original show involved with it, because that continues, like they were saying, oh, that'll bring in the nostalgia of the old show, but that's not really their audience. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, Barney was always geared towards, preschool and toddlers and children. So why would they want to try to, appeal to 20 and 30 and 40-year-old people now?
Yeah.
They wouldn't, because that's not their core audience, and they know that. So I think, if you're trying to do that with like superhero stuff, like the Flash that's on when it was on television,
right.
They bring back the old Flash, they bring in characters from the old shows, and that makes sense because you're trying to appeal to the people who watched that as a kid and loved that, and that makes sense, but not with the kid. I mean, I would say the opposite of that though is Blue's Clues. Blue's Clues has done a good job with bringing Steve back on it. Yeah, and I think that in a way, I think there's an argument that actually may, if they had used people from the original Barney, if they'd used that, it makes the adults more, they have the nostalgia for it. So they're like, oh, I really want to show my child this new show. Yeah. So there's an argument to both sides, but I think ultimately, I mean, it's going to be kids that generally are going to be the ones that are going to be, that's what it's targeted for. That's their core audience. So right. I think it really doesn't, I think we're overthinking it.
I think that's exactly what it is, especially because we're still so used to what made it popular for us, and the children media realm is completely different than what it was back then. So the formats, the fact that it's animation and the kind of things that they gear towards that kids enjoy today is so different than what we enjoyed in the 90s. Not to say, like you brought up Blue's Clues, like it's not to say that it couldn't still be just as successful if they followed that same old formula. But Mattel is a toy company where they, what they do is make things for kids and target their things around the kid of today, not the kids of like who are adults now, who were kids, that kind of thing. We'll see that. I think if that movie ever comes to fruition, we'll see that there where they kind of bank on this nostalgia because it's going to be for the adults. But I think they're what I do think they're doing right is focusing on who is their target right now. Yeah. Not who's the parents of the kids that we're trying to target, just specifically what is our target? It's these kids. Let's make content to that. So I try not to speak too much about good or bad on it until I finally see something in that I can actually watch and base an opinion off of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way.
But yeah, I hope it's nothing but good things though. But we'll see. All right, man. As we always do on this podcast, is we always ask the visitor who's coming on to bring, sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it's two things, just depending on who the person is. A Barney item that you own that maybe you hold more near and dear to you than others. Could you just share whatever item it is that you brought today, and then just give an explanation on why it is that item that you chose?
Yeah, so I was trying to make a choice of one item, but I couldn't really narrow. I got three, but that's one cool. Of them is one of them's been sitting here the whole time. It's my Barney bag that I had. That's probably the most, to me personally, prior to having a kid, that is my favorite Barney item, just because I used to carry it, everything, all of my stuffed animals, my toys, I put it all in that and carry it everywhere. So there's that. I mean, that's my favorite. I did. I should have brought this out earlier, but I have the actual book from the
cool.
show that I went to when I was a kid that I found. Like I said, my parents kept everything, so like it's got like the whole like.
Wow.
I don't know if you can see it or not, but
oh yeah, you can see it for sure.
But yeah, it's got like all of it's the program to the whole show, which is cool because it's like it has the lyrics to every song in it and it's in the show, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So I have that, and I have the poster, which is in my daughter's playroom.
That's amazing.
Hanging up, and then I have this. This is the one Microsoft made, right?
Yep.
Why, hello there. How's it going? Oh, I am so excited.
And but as I had a daughter, the one that I think that was the best was, so I put it in here because I thought it was kind of cool. My mom, about a year or so back, found these in the attic, and she cleaned them up, and she was like, I want you to give this to Cassidy, my daughter. And I was like, and when I saw it, I kind of almost teared up because I was like, I forgot about these. But as soon as I saw them, I was like, I remember these vividly. Yeah. So it's my Barney shoes as a kid.
Oh, wow.
And I still have the box and everything. So, but yeah, these are like my daughter's favorite. Like she wears these all the time, but
those
you can see them, but they look like that. Yeah. But yeah, they're pretty cool. And then like the little shoestrings have Barney on them as well.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that was special to be able to still have these and hand them down to her. And what was also kind of funny was that my mom, she was cleaning them, and she accidentally dropped one of the shoestrings down the drain.
Oh man.
And she felt horrible. She started crying and she felt terrible about it. So she was like, I've got to fix this somehow. So she started looking online trying to find the shoestrings and say Barney. And she didn't tell me about this until after she made these decisions. Because honestly, I would have just told her, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Just we'll go buy some solid white shoestrings, put them in there. It doesn't make any difference. But my mom took it upon herself to go look on eBay, and she found a whole nother set of shoes. And she just bought, and they happened to be the next size up than what I had. So she just bought those. She put the shoestrings in the old pair that would fit my daughter. And then she was like, so she tells me all this whole story, and I'm like, Mom, you didn't have to do that. And I found out she spent a lot of money on this second pair, and I was like, you didn't have to do that. And she's like, oh, I felt horrible. I had to do something about it. And but anyway, so it ended up kind of being cool because she was able to wear those, and then she just outgrew those not long ago, and now she's got the new pair that are this size up that she can wear for another probably 6 months to a year. Wow. So they're her favorite shoes.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Those are all super great. I've always wanted the Barney bag, and I've seen it on eBay a handful of times. I haven't purchased it yet, but I've always wanted it since a kid. And yeah, that book's amazing. The shoes are amazing. I have the animatronic Barney. I never. Did you ever sync him up to the TV and do that?
No,
thing? Me neither.
The animatronic Barney, actually, I didn't have that as a kid.
Oh, okay.
I bought that specifically for my daughter.
Okay, yeah.
But I had seen them before, and I remember having it. But I have a bunch of dolls, a bunch of Barney stuffed animals. I probably have like 3 or 4 Barneys. I have 2 or 3 BJs and baby bops and stuff that are all in my daughter's playroom. Yeah. But and those were all one. I haven't bought the only Barney dolls that I've bought her is that one because I wanted her to be able to interact with it, which is cool. Yeah. And then I bought her one of the little plushes that Bob West has where he signs them. But I didn't have him sign it because it was for her, and I was like, she's gonna get it dirty anyway. Yeah. So I just bought one off Amazon. But that's the only 2 Barneys that I've bought for her. All the rest of the stuff that I have was all from mine from the 90s. Wow. That's
awesome, man. Yeah, those are all really, really good things cool things to have. Thanks for sharing those with us. Before we wrap up here, I always ask the same question to kind of end it because the story is different for everyone. But it's a very simple question, so it doesn't have a right or wrong way to be answered, but I just ask you specifically, and now you have a kid. Why Barney? Why do you think it resonated so much with you? Why do you think it resonates with children of today still, like your daughter? Why do we need that kind of character?
Well, if I knew exactly what it was, I would try to replicate it and
Yeah.
and do it again. But I think it's a lot of components that happen. I think it's all of the stars aligning perfectly to make it work.
For sure.
And it shows. I mean, every component of it is great. The music is great. The writing is great. The acting is great. The body performers are fantastic. The kids that were in the show were great.
Yeah.
I mean, even I'm very definitely going to be partial to the ones that were, in the first ones, like, but all of them throughout it were, for kid actors, they were great, and they really did a good job. And I think, and what's crazy is out of all those things that I named, the last thing the one thing I didn't really mention was the way that Barney looked. So we were talking about that earlier. None of that to me was like the minor thing. I mean, people liked Barney and the way he looked, but all the other things, the fact that he was, basically there was nothing wrong. There was no bad part of Barney. Like he loved everyone. He cared about everyone. He was concerned about everyone. And I think that's what, in a perfect world, that's what you would aspire to have.
Sure.
So, and I think that's so great for children to hear that and to know that, that is a real, that's real. And that I think that all of those things brought it together and done by people who really, really meant what they were doing and cared about it. That's what made Barney what it was.
Definitely.
And I think you can see that when you watch the shows, even like you were saying, when you go back and you watch them, they still hold up. And it's because of that. I think it's because of the fact that the people making it, they really were invested in what they were doing, and it meant everything to them.
Definitely.
So I think that's how I would answer that question.
Yeah, that's a great way to answer it. Korey, thank you so much for, again, being willing to sit down and have a conversation with me today about Barney. It's been a lot of fun. Like I said earlier, I hope that your career as far as voice acting and things just goes and skyrockets for you, and you get so many opportunities that come your way. It's really cool seeing people, other creatives, whether they're artists or voice artists or whatever it is, within this community, go out and find their own spot in the world and do amazing things. So I hope to see that from you as you grow. But yeah, thanks again for sitting down here with me. I really enjoyed it.
All right, yeah, thank you for having me on. I had a really great time.
For sure. And then for Barney history fans, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Again, if you would like to be on the podcast, there is a Google form on our website, barneyhistoryfans.com. I have been getting a lot of messages from people telling me that they want to be on the podcast. You don't have to do that. Just go to the form, put your name there, and if it's there, I will have seen it. And I just kind of choose people as we go along. So fill out the form, and then we'll get you here on the podcast at some point. I hope to see you guys in your spot of love. Take care.